The Random Jottings of Donald J. in Nelson in Pendle, Lancashire. Malkin Tower is not Blacko Tower. Blacko Tower is a 19th century folly built by a man called Stansfield. And the farm nearby called Malkin Tower Farm is just a Stansfield Tower folly name. Malkin Tower in Pendle. Malkin Tower was the residence of the chief protagonists, Elizabeth Southerns, also known as Demdike, and her granddaughter Alison Device, two of the witches of Pendle. On April 10, 1612, one of the most well-known alleged witches' covens took place in Malkin Tower. It is one of the most well-known witches' covens in English history. 8 of these people were arrested as well as tried for causing harm by use of witchcraft. 7 of the 8 arrested had been found guilty and executed. It is thought the house may have been destroyed soon after the trials. The only real solid evidence for its location comes from the official account by the clerk of the court, Thomas Potts, who places it somewhere within the Forest of Pendle. Excavations by archaeologists in the region have failed to discover any kind of confirmed remains of the building. A number of reasons have been suggested for the word Malkin. However, despite the name, it is likely that Malkin Tower may have just been an ordinary cottage. There are several possible derivations for the name Malkin. It was a well-known form for the women's names Mary or Maud. It also used to describe a woman who is poor or shabby. Another word, which is similar to Mawkin, is used to describe a woman who is of lower class or slut. Also used to describe a cat, especially an old cat, as in the terms Grimalkin or Grey Malkin. It was an Old English northern name for a hare. It's said that witches were able to transform into them. Another suggestion is that the name Malkin was a combination of mal and kin, as a slight to the residents. Historian Arthur Douglas suggests this is not very likely, as the education in that region was poor at that time. There is also another possibility, which is the courruption of malt kiln. A claim made by Alison Device supports this, in that Anne Whittle's family, also referred to as Chattox, had broken into their firehouse. There is speculation on a variety of buildings that could be the reason for the name of the tower. Authors believe it may have been part of a Norman peel tower, which was built as a defence against Scottish raiders, or even a disused lookout for a poacher. It was suggested by W. R. Mitchell, a historian, that it was a small farm building, which could have been shelter for food or livestock and then converted into accommodation. Poverty in the Forest of Pendle was very common, so the building could have been nothing but a hovel, and tower could have just been a sarcastic name that local residents gave it. It is very likely that Elizabeth Southerns and Alison Device were just tenants of Malkin Tower and did not own it. Alternative names for Malkin Tower is Mawkin Tower or Malking Tower. In the heart of the Forest of Pendle stood a small cottage known as Malkin Tower. It was said to be home to the most notorious witches in all of England. Elizabeth Southerns, also known as Demdike, was the matriarch of the family and lived there with her granddaughter, Alison Device. On a dark and stormy night, a group of men dressed in black robes arrived at Malkin Tower. They were sent by the local magistrate to investigate rumors of witchcraft in the area. The witches were caught off guard, but they knew they had to protect themselves. The men barged into the cottage, accusing the women of casting spells and causing harm to their neighbors. The witches denied any wrongdoing, but the men wouldn't listen. They searched the cottage from top to bottom, looking for evidence of their dark magic. Eventually, the men found what they were looking for. They discovered a small clay figure buried in the ground, which they believed was an effigy used in a curse. The witches denied any knowledge of the figure, but it was enough to convince the men of their guilt. The witches were arrested and taken to trial. Elizabeth and Alison, along with 6 other accused witches, were found guilty and sentenced to death. They were hanged on a nearby hill, their bodies left to rot as a warning to others who practiced witchcraft. Malkin Tower was abandoned soon after the trial. Some say it was destroyed by angry villagers, while others believe it was left to crumble on its own. Today, there is no evidence of the cottage's existence, and the exact location remains a mystery. Despite the lack of physical proof, the legend of Malkin Tower lives on. It serves as a reminder of a time when people were persecuted for their beliefs and accused of crimes they did not commit. The witches of Malkin Tower may be long gone, but their story will never be forgotten. By Donald J.